This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Christina Oakley Harrington, founder of the legendary Treadwell's Bookshop in London and author of the Treadwell's Book of Plant Magic. We dive into her work in magic and folklore, explore the rich, earthy history of plant magic, and uncover the stories and secrets behind the herbs and flowers that have enchanted humans for centuries. Whether you're a seasoned practitioner or just plant curious, listen on to find out what plants can do if you just ask.
My name's Christina Oakley Harrington, and I am a researcher on folklore and witchcraft, but I'm best known probably by most people as being the person who founded Treadwell's Bookshop in London, and I still run it to this day.
Tell me about Treadwell's, because I have been only the once and I kept meaning to go, and I'm really, really pleased I made it to your bookshop in the end. But yes, I think a lot of people will know you through that and will know of the bookshop. But for those who don't, can you give us a bit of background?
Treadwell's is an occult bookshop that also does literature, anthropology, history, culture. We're right in the middle of the museum district and the university district, and we're trying to make it a bookshop that you want to come to and that you want to come back to. And it's a bit of an adventure. So we have a mummy case stood up in one corner. We have a giant sofa with a carved green men on its arms at the back. And we've got drapes and brocade embroideries hanging around and giant oaken bookcases. And we love people to just come on a date, come with a friend, come to browse around. I think one of the things that really struck me about a good bookshop is it's a stepping out of the world a little bit. And I think we all need a bit of sanctuary when we want to think about ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I brought my mum along to an event that you held with the author or the co-author of a book about the witches of Scotland. And I didn't say to my mum, it's an occult bookshop. And I didn't mention the word magic because I thought she'd go, what? And she went along and she was really blown away by the depth of the historical information, because that's her thing. But I don't know why I didn't mention it. I think she probably, as I said, might have gone, oh, okay. But, for anyone listening who hears the word occult and thinks, oh, well, I'm not necessarily sure, that's my thing, what would you say?
One of the things that the word occult means is hidden knowledge, and all sorts of knowledge gets hidden for a load of different reasons. Folklore gets hidden, people get frightened about folklore. Astrology gets hidden. People are frightened about that, even though it was like the basis of science up until about 1700 AD. So we just think of it as a place for people curious about the seen and the unseen.
Excellent way of putting it. And I think probably that's why it's faced its issues in the past, is because there's this fear around it and lack of understanding. But you've written a book about plant magic, and I have got it. It's brilliant. And I don't want to kind of go too much into the detail of the book because it is so specific. You would dip into it. It's like an encyclopedia. You dip into it and maybe research a plant or perhaps research a particular topic, but you wouldn't necessarily sit down and read it cover to cover. So I was just going to maybe get a general overview of why you were drawn to plant magic. So yeah, maybe let's start there. Why plant magic?
Plant magic herb magic in the British Isles, Ireland, Wales, Scotland, and mainstream most of Europe. It has this tremendous 1,000-year history where everybody knew what was the plant you used for protection. Everybody knew what you would burn to banish negative energies. And something happened in the early 20th century, which was that knowledge died out. So one of the things that happens now when people are interested in folklore and herb magic and herb customs is they're picking up from the internet things that are folklore from other places where it didn't die out. So because I run Treadwell's Bookshop, people come in and say, oh, do you have white sage? Because I want to, purify my flat because it has a negative energy. And white sage is the purification plant of the plains, Native American people of the plains of North America. And they use it. And that's become super well known across the internet. And some people have come in and asked for Palo Santo because they've been to South America, and that's the purification plant that is used there. This wood called Palo Santo, holy wood, and it gives off a very aromatic smell, which is used for purification. And what was used in the British Isles and across Europe was rowan and vervain. Why do people not commit to Treadwell's and ask for rowan and vervain to purify their space or to cleanse the energy of where they live? Because nobody knows. Why does nobody know? It's because it was deemed a silly, stupid superstition about 150 years ago. And people just went and bought bleach instead. So the reason I wrote the plant magic book was so that that kind of common knowledge that everybody knew, wasn't secret knowledge. Everybody knew it. Everybody did it. That's just one tiny example. But I thought it's such a shame it's died out here that people are using purification plants that don't even grow on this continent. So I felt really sorry for the rowan tree and for the vervain plant, because there they are, they just grow like weeds. They grow everywhere. They were used for 1,000 years for purification and good luck and good energy. And now people walk past them and such other things just because they don't know about them.
Yeah, and if we are trying to source ingredients that might not be occurring naturally, I think there's sometimes an issue around harvesting and like the environmental footprint of getting these things. So I'm guessing it's a really good thing to do, that if you're interested in this kind of thing, that you do look locally.
It's wonderful because they're not having to be flown in from South America, or they're not being mass farmed. And there they are, they're local, and they're just there, and they're lovely, lovely plants. They've got wonderful, wonderful energies. And I feel they're sort of just crying out and saying, hi, just do remember us. Please don't overlook us.
And so it's an important point that you made as well about how it died out. And I think a lot of us in the UK assume, well, we don't do it, therefore other people don't do it, or they've evolved past it or grown out of it. And actually, as you say, it's very active in other parts of the world, and we just don't see that. So therefore we think, well, everybody thinks like us, and actually that's not at all the case, is it?
And there also can be this very sense of the exotic. Oh, like I went to South America, there's this very powerful tree there called the Palo Santo, and they use this magical special wood. And I really want to bring good luck to my flat, I should find somewhere in London that sells it. And actually, in those regions where it grows, it's not exotic. And so we can get very romantic about things simply because they come from far, far away and can overlook things that grow locally. The vervain plant is a weed. If you live in London or you live anywhere, it'll be growing on the edge of the pavement, on the street. It'll be growing anywhere that there's just a verge. It's not exotic. It's absolutely wonderful. And it's 1,000 years that people in the British Isles stand on Europe use vervain for purification and energy clearance and swore by it. Something doesn't last 1,000 years as a practice, and there isn't something to it, perhaps. So I think we need to be careful sometimes about making something that is from far, far away super exotic and desirable simply because it's exotic.
Yeah, and also you said about 150 years ago or so, we took the decision actually to move away from plant magic. Did that coincide with something like the start of the medical practice?
It started with the Enlightenment, but more so with industrialization. People start working in factories and working in offices. Fewer people are working on the land. And that's when we really see it die down, is in 1890 to 1920. Also, people are moving away from village life and they're moving into suburban life, which has much less sharing of common knowledge. It's also when people stop really knowing how to make jam as much, for example. Things that you learn if you're in a local community and there's shared kitchens and women work together and men work together. A lot of things get passed down. It's like how you do things. The minute you're in suburbs or in separate flats, then shared knowledge declines very quickly, including plant knowledge.
And I wondered as well how much we do still use it today without even realising it. Can you think of any examples?
I can indeed. We always give roses for love. On Valentine's Day, and you've fallen deeply in love with somebody, you're not going to turn up with daisies.
Well, you might not get the same results, but
and that's on some very basic level. We feel that roses carry the energy of love, almost the power of love. It's a message of love, but there's something about the smell of roses, the red rose. It's a very deep place for us psychologically. It says, oh, okay, this is love energy. If you go back 2,000 years, and guess what people gave one another when they wanted to express love? They gave each other roses.
And there's something about that whole if you do something as a ritual for that many years, and you mentioned like 1,000 years as a lot of these plants have been used for, and I wondered, is there something in that that imbues a plant with even more meaning? And, you know, that can be in any sense. It doesn't have to be an actual physical meaning. It could be something just that we attach to it as humans, therefore that gives it power. Is there something in that whole ritualistic use and that continual use that amplifies what that plant can do?
I suspect it might. I really suspect it might. It's just, I'm very aware that when something's not been done for a while, there's also something quite special about reviving it. I remember the first time I had verbena and I was using it for purification, and I found it in all these old folklore books. And it wasn't like I had some magical grandmother who taught it to me, because it didn't die out in my amazing special mystical family. That's nonsense. I'm trained as an academic historian, so I'm very comfortable looking at academic books of different kinds. I know where we're around research libraries, and there it is. Everybody is saying, oh, the folklorist went out and spoke to the people of Yorkshire, the people of Tuscany, or the people of Scotland, and this is what they do to protect the cows from invading, or the neighbors' envy from coming in, or after something bad has happened, they sell it purified there. And there's rowan and verbena coming up again and again. So the first time I did a purification with verbena at my house, there was 1,000 years behind that, but there was also 150 years of almost nobody doing it, and it felt really special. I sort of felt, this may be me, but I felt the energy of the verbena plant going, oh, thank you for noticing.
A lot of people that I speak to who are dipping into things like plant magic also have that really either scientific or academic background. And for me, I love that because you've kind of got a foot in both camps, and I'm fascinated by how you reconcile two seemingly different disciplines. I know that they're not, but how do you think you sort of crossed over from one into the other, or how did you bridge those two disciplines?
I think they're very different modes of thinking. Every human being bridges different modes of thinking. So I'm going to give a really obvious example. Like, we all know that falling in love is completely irrational. We all fall in love with inappropriate people, or people who are absolutely perfect for us, but very difficult to live with because we're ill-suited in one way or another. And we've all fallen in love with people for whom, if you look on paper, be like, is this a really sensible choice to get ahead in life? The answer is no, but you fall in love with them. So we're all irrational in that sense. We all have these different modes. And for me, the part of myself that is magical, that will do a house purification with a verbena plant, chatting with her and, mixing her up and burning her like an incense and carrying her around the house. It's just something that I do. I don't think about whether it's rational, whether it's scientific, whether this is really going to work. It is that part of myself that is, these are things that I do. They make me feel good. And the part of myself that believes in myth and fairy tale and story and human love and human connection feels it makes perfect sense.
I love that. So you don't have to say, oh, does this work? It's just, this is a practice that I'm choosing and it feels right for me, so I'm going to do it. That's a really, I think, healthy way of looking at it. If you've got any sort of reticence about doing it, if it just feels right. And also in that vein, I wonder if some people are put off of doing it because they think there's a right and a wrong way of doing it. But actually, it sounds as if maybe you could do it on quite an instinctual level and still be okay.
One of the things that's very clear from the folklore research around plant magic is that things were done differently depending on where you live. So there's loads of variation between what one family does and another family does, or what one village does, and people 2 villages away do it. Oh, no, if you're in one village, you put the rowan berries on top of the windowsill to keep good energy in, and in the 2 villages over, you crush them up and you burn them, and then you take the smoke around. So it's very clear there's just so many ways of doing things traditionally that it's impossible to become obsessed with doing it in one particular way.
I suspect, going back to the sort of idea of people doing this without realising, because it's a historical tradition that's been passed down through culture and society, I suspect a lot of gardeners do things that are, like a magical practice, but without even realising half the time.
Absolutely. So do cooks. And there are things that we do at Christmas. Pulling a cracker, reading the fortune. We don't have to believe it to do it, but, is it really Christmas if you're not pulling a cracker and wearing a paper crown? It's not complete without it. We have these things that make us feel that we're doing life in a full way. We're doing Christmas in a full way, or doing Easter in a full way. Or then families have these traditions as well. Things we always do on, Nana's birthday. And if somebody says, oh, that's really silly because, doing something on Nana's birthday, she died 20 years ago. Who would care if we had her favorite cake at dinner? Do you believe in life after death? You don't have to go down that road. It's just like, no, this feels the right way to remember Nana. We always have her birthday cake on her birthday and to remember her. And so it feels like that with gardening and cooking and plant charms.
Thinking about that actually, and particularly, if somebody's passed away and you get a particular flower, like from my granddad, he loved sweet peas. So, I wanted to try and get sweet peas for his funeral. And like you say, they're not here. Actually, it doesn't really matter to them. But then you're remembering them and you're also sort of connected to them because there was a reason that they were drawn to sweet peas. And you can't explain that. They could probably not have explained it. They probably could have said, oh, they smell nice or something. But nobody really gets why we're drawn to a particular plant. And I think that in itself is quite important to recognise and just know that that's coming from a deeper place that you don't really understand, actually. And so sometimes you just got to go with these things that you love.
There's so much in life that we just go with these things because it feels like the right thing to do and we don't overanalyze them. And sometimes when something becomes a good luck charm or something for a blessing or a little piece of magic, I think it's just nicer to keep it in that realm of things that just feel right, that we don't overanalyze.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, actually. It really doesn't do to overthink it sometimes. If you just enjoy it, then go for it. And I said I wouldn't go too much into the kind of the detail of your book, but it's now July in the UK, and I know it's going to vary if anybody's listening outside the UK. But if you were in the UK at the moment and you wanted to just have a go, is there anything that's out at the moment that you're particularly enjoying working with, or that you might recommend to people and say, try this particular technique? Or have you got any advice, basically?
Any time that it's high summer is a lovely time to do anything to do with oak trees. And we're coming up for poppies in the fields. So poppy things are lovely. Well, there's this lovely tradition with oak trees, which you have to go back to being a bit of a child for and like just re-embrace the wonder of childhood. And there was, until about 150 years ago, a belief that if you go to an oak tree and find the little knots that, almost like make a little door, that those little dots go into where the energy or the fairies of the oak tree live, and you can connect with them by using a little bit of oak leaf. The different way, if you wanted to go full hog on different ways of doing it, there are a few variants to do that, but it's just such a great time to, if we can't climb trees, at least sort of lean against them, particularly oak trees, big trees at this time of year. We don't have enough tree time, I feel.
Yes, I totally agree. I've got a big oak tree in my mum's garden that I occasionally go and give a hug, which sounds ludicrous, but I just love it. I'm so grateful that it's there and it's so old and huge that I just sometimes feel like it really needs like a pat on the back and a, well done for surviving, quite honestly, in this world against a lot of odds. And so you mentioned as well plant charms. What are they? Because I actually don't know about those.
Plant charm is where, there's a plant that has a magical power, traditionally. Give a tiny example. There is a couple of plants that I can't recall them off the top of my head that were used in folklore and folk traditions to bring back lost animals. And that supposedly if you had a stick with this leaves of that, it would draw an animal that had wandered away back home again. And I never tried it. It was something that was there. And then my partner's best friend's cat just would not come in the house. This little cat Vincent wouldn't even come in the house, was really spooked. And they was really, really freaked out. Like, what's wrong with Vincent? Why would Vincent not come in the house? And so message came to me, the wacky partner of best friend, like, can you do something to help Vincent come back in the house? And I said, well, look, I've never done this, but I'll give it a go. And I went and found a bit of this twig and a bit of this, and I made it into a charm bag. That's what I mean by plant charm. So I just tied them up with a ribbon, and I wrote on the ribbon, Vincent, 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 and handed it to my partner, who then gave it to her best friend. And they just waggled the ground around the back door of the house, and they burned to the bits of the smoke that go around the house. And, they sang a song to Vincent. They're saying, Vincent, we love you. Come on back in the house. And 2 or 3 days later, Vincent got a little bit less spooked and eventually did come back in the house. So I find when word gets round that I do these things that, a friend of a friend in some funny situation, needing a baby blessing or a cat that won't come in the house, they've tried everything else. They'll say, my partner, or say, my friend, could you get your friend, or you could get your partner to do a little something? And so often that's when I'll make a little plant charm and say, well, look, try this.
Brilliant. You're a good friend to know, definitely. And going back to what you said about the oak trees as well, and that idea that you can tap into like a doorway, it made me think actually, and you may well not have done, but have you ever kind of done any research into why children seem to just be born with this natural curiosity that doesn't poo-poo anything like this and is so open to it, whereas when we get older, we just kind of go, oh, no, we're a bit rational now and we're not into that at all?
It's a funny thing. I think some of it, I'm sure there are brain reasons, there are neurological reasons, sense of imagination, the high absorption of all information, which is part of the survival instinct. So absorbing masses of info when it's young makes an animal survive. And this sense of delight and play is also part of the survival instinct. So there may be some scientific reasons, I'm sure that there are. One of the great tasks of adulthood is to not be so overcome by the pressures of daily life that there isn't a space for play. And play is the place of enchantment, and enchantment is the place of wonder, and wonder is the place of magic.
Absolutely. I think it's a time issue as well. We just run out of time to observe and engage and think about anything that other than what's, immediately needs doing a lot of the time. So. And the other thing I was wondering is to go back to who still practices plant magic kind of worldwide. Are there any particular cultures who still do this very actively and are doing it very well?
Everywhere there's a shamanic culture, they do. So all across Africa, there are local and regional varying traditions and people who are specialists in it. In South America, there are shamans of plant magic specifically. In Siberia, the Siberian shaman traditions have plant magic as part of them and plant healing. The difference with the European tradition was, A, that it's died out, but even before it died out, it was an open source tradition. It was something that everybody knew. It was not kept to a specific bunch of people. There were not secret plant magicians and secret plant witches or secret plant healers. The folk knowledge of what plants did, both for healing and for good luck and specific bits of magical powers of the plants, was just something that was shared widely. And so that's a cultural difference that Europe has always had, at least since about 500 AD, which I think is really lovely. People say, I want to become like a plant witch or a magic person. I'd love to go, get initiated or find some secret special teacher. And in this culture, no, it's always belonged to everybody.
And speaking of that, speaking of learning about it, apart from getting your excellent book, where else would you recommend people go to look if they're just perhaps starting out on the journey?
I wrote the book because I couldn't find a book that did it.
Oh, okay.
I looked at over 250 folklore books and folk collections from between 500 years ago and 100 years ago, when it was common knowledge and people would tell folklore, so if they jot it down or they'd put it in some strict notebook that then survived in an archive. So I went and found it because I couldn't find it anywhere else. So I would say my book is probably pretty unique in that sense. It's the Treadwell's Book of Plant Magic. It's available on Amazon, it's available through our website, Treadwell's Book of Plant Magic. The most important thing is I would just say to connect with plants is to just spend time with them. If you're a gardener, great, you already do. If you're not a gardener, just walk around the hedges. I've got this wonderful little app. It's called Picture This. And, I pointed all these different weeds and plants and things by the hedges. I live in Southeast London. It's not like I don't live in some sort of witchy idyll of the Derbyshire Hills or anything. I live in London. And I found the most wonderful magical powers and lovely energy just by finding them and finding out what their name is by pointing my little app at them.
Yeah, so basically just get out and explore.
Yeah, just get your hands dirty. It's more important to do it than it is to do it perfectly.
My thanks to Christina for sharing her knowledge and to you, as always, for listening. If you like this episode, I encourage you to listen to episode 243, Magical Plants and Flowers, and episode 293, The Rewilding of Molly McFlynn. You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.